It's not how much money you make, but how much money you keep, how hard it works for you, and how many generations you maintain it. Robert T. Kiyosaki. For years, we've been taught to work harder, not to think differently. Most people get up every morning, make their coffee, rush to work, complete their 8 hours, and return home feeling like they've done the right thing. Yet, deep down, a quiet voice whispers, "Why am I still in the same place?" That's the question that separates the dreamer from the conscious one. Because the uncomfortable truth is that most people aren't poor for lack of effort, but for lack of understanding of how money really works. From a young age, we were programmed to follow a path that seemed safe. Study, get a good job, earn a salary, and keep expenses under control. But that model was designed for another era, for an industrial world that no longer exists. Today, the average worker is trapped in an invisible cycle, working to pay off debts, buying things that depreciate, and calling it progress. The irony is that the more they earn, the more they spend, and the more they spend, the further they move away from freedom. Think about it for a moment. Perhaps you know someone, or maybe it was you, who got a raise at work. The excitement was short-lived because the following month they'd already bought a new car, a state-of-the-art phone, or moved to a more expensive place. That raise, which promised relief, became a new cycle. What few understand is that money, when left undirected, finds its own escape route. And almost always, it ends up in the pockets of those who know how to make it work for them. The financial breaking point doesn't happen when you lose money, but when you realize you've been moving forward for years without making any progress. It's that quiet night when you review your accounts and discover that, despite all your efforts, you're still in the same or worse situation than before. It's the moment you understand that working hard isn't enough. You have to work with purpose. Look around you. We live surrounded by symbols of success that actually represent debt. Financed cars, mortgaged homes, clothes bought with credit cards. We've confused luxury with freedom. But true luxury isn't what you can buy, but what you can maintain without depending on a salary. True luxury is having time. Time to think, to create, to be with your loved ones without the pressure of money suffocating you. Most people don't realize that the system is designed to keep them busy. From school onward, we're taught to memorize formulas, not to question reality. No one explained how cash flow is generated, how taxes work, or how a simple purchase can turn into a constant loss. We were taught to be good employees, not good stewards of our freedom. And so we grow up believing that financial success depends on sacrifice, when in reality it depends on knowledge. There's a story that illustrates this well. A man works for 30 years at a company. He arrives on time, meets his goals, and finally retires. The day he receives his final paycheck, he feels pride, but also fear. Because for the first time, he understands that his income depended entirely on a system that no longer needs him. He has no investments, no income-generating properties, no skills he can monetize outside of work. All he built was a dependent structure. At that moment, he realizes that he was never the master of his time. He was merely a tenant of his own labor. Now compare that to another man who perhaps earns less, but who sets aside a small amount each month to build an asset. He invests in an idea, buys a tool, creates something that generates income even when he's not there. That man doesn't run, he designs. He doesn't chase money, he attracts it. The difference isn't his salary but his mindset. That's the real line that separates rich and poor. It's not the amount of money they have, but how they interpret it. For most, money is a means to consume. For the rich, it's a tool for creation. One spends to feel better today, the other invests to live better tomorrow. One seeks immediate pleasure, the other seeks future freedom. That simple difference in mindset creates opposite destinies. Imagine two people with the same income. One buys a bigger TV, the other buys a camera and starts recording content. One spends their bonus on a weekend getaway, the other puts it into an interest-bearing investment. After 5 years, the first has memories, the second assets. That's the power of small decisions repeated over time. And here's the most revealing thing. Wealth doesn't begin with money, but with vision. Most people say, when I have money, I'll invest. But the true investor thinks, I'll invest even if I don't have much. That attitude sets them apart from the average person. Because money follows the direction of intention. If your intention is to spend, it will disappear. If your intention is to multiply, it will find a way to grow. Think about this. How many times have you worked for money you never actually saw? You pay taxes, rent, utilities, debts, and at the end of the month you're left with little to nothing. It's not your fault, it's your system. You've been conditioned to feed a cycle that benefits others. Change begins when you decide to break it. And breaking it doesn't mean quitting your job or risking everything. It means waking up. Understanding that every financial decision is a choice between dependence and freedom. Many people confuse stability with security. But stability is staying in the same place. Security is having options. A stable employee can lose their job tomorrow and have no plan B. An unstable entrepreneur can experience ups and downs, but with 10 paths open. Which of the two is closer to freedom? The mindset shift no one taught us in school is this: don't work for money, make money work for you. This phrase sounds like a cliche until you put it into practice. And putting it into practice requires 3 things: education, discipline, and patience. Education to understand how money works. Discipline to stay firm when everyone else is spending. And patience to allow your right decisions to mature. In Japan, there's a concept called Kaizen, which means continuous improvement. It's not about giant leaps, but about small, consistent steps. If you apply Kaizen to your finances, you'll discover that even a 1% improvement each month can change your entire future. Saving doesn't make you rich, but consistently investing in things that generate returns will. A book, a tool, an idea, a relationship. Everything can be an asset if you use it wisely. Ask yourself today, what part of your life generates income without requiring your physical presence? If the answer is none, you're still in the building stage. And that's okay as long as you start now. Your age and job don't matter. What matters is your awareness. Every minute you spend not building assets, you're increasing your liabilities. Every time you buy something that loses value, you're renting out your freedom. Money has no morals. It's neither good nor bad. It simply amplifies who you already are. If you're disciplined, money will multiply you. If you're impulsive, it will consume you. That's why financial freedom begins in the mind, not in the bank. When you understand that, money ceases to be an end in itself and becomes an ally. The real financial turning point comes when you stop asking yourself, how do I earn more? And start asking yourself, how do I make what I earn work for me? That's the difference between living off your effort and living off your strategy. Between chasing money and walking alongside it. And when that moment arrives, something inside you changes forever. You're no longer impressed by empty luxury nor frightened by scarcity. Because you know that true wealth isn't what you possess, but what you can create without fear. On that day, without even realizing it, you will have crossed the invisible threshold between being a slave to money and becoming its master. But before we continue, please write in the comments which country you're listening to this audiobook from, and if this message resonates with you, please like and share this post. This way you'll ensure you don't miss any content that nourishes your mind and brings you closer each day to the life you truly deserve. There's no time to lose. Now let's continue. Chapter number 1. The great difference between the rich and the poor. The mind of the poor is focused on survival, the mind of the rich on multiplication. Napoleon Hill. For centuries, humankind has sought to understand the difference between those who prosper and those who stagnate. Many attribute it to luck, others to environment, opportunities, or inheritance. But the truth is simpler and at the same time more uncomfortable. The rich and the poor don't think alike. It's not about intelligence or effort but about perspective. One sees possibilities where the other sees obstacles. One seeks value, the other seeks comfort. This difference in mindset is so profound that, even if they live in the same country, under the same laws and in the same market, their destinies ultimately diverge. The wealthy think in terms of flow. They know that money must move, grow, circulate. They understand that each bill they possess can become a seed that, if planted in the right place, will produce more bills. They don't see money as something to be spent, but as a tool that works. Their focus isn't on how much they earn, but on how much they retain and multiply. Meanwhile, the poor see money as a means of consumption. They receive it and quickly give it away in exchange for immediate pleasure, appearances, things that make them feel they are getting ahead. They don't think about the return but about the gratification. And that small difference, repeated thousands of times, creates a gap impossible to close. A simple example. Imagine two people who earn the exact same salary. The first barely gets paid, pays off debts, buys new clothes, eats out, upgrades their phone, and promises that next month they will save. The second, on the other hand, decides to set aside 20% of their income and put it into something that generates value. A small investment, a course, a tool. Over time, that investment begins to pay off, and the money that used to evaporate becomes cash flow. The difference isn't in the income but in where the money goes. One works for their money, the other makes their money work for them. The key difference between the two can be summed up in one phrase. The poor seek security, the rich seek growth. Security is an illusion. We believe that having a fixed salary is stability, But stability without expansion is just a more elegant form of stagnation. The wealthy understand that calculated risk is part of the game. They don't gamble impulsively, but neither are they paralyzed by fear. While one saves for fear of losing, the other invests with the vision of winning. That's why when there's a crisis, the rich see opportunities, the poor see threats. There's a real-life example that perfectly illustrates this. During a recession, many people sell their properties or liquidate their businesses for fear of losing everything. At that same time, the wealthy buy assets at discounted prices. What is the end for some is the beginning for others. When the market recovers, the positions are reversed. The poor person watches with envy and says, "They were lucky." But it wasn't luck, it was preparation. The wealthy person already knew that cycles exist and prepared for them. Another crucial difference lies in how they interpret value. The poor see the price, the rich see the potential. If a course costs $100, the poor person thinks about what they will lose if it's not useful. The rich person thinks about what they will gain by applying it. When the poor person sees a book, they see it as an expense. The rich person sees it as an investment in knowledge. When the poor person sees a business opportunity, they think, "What if it goes wrong?" The rich person asks, "What if it goes right?" Fear paralyzes the former, vision propels the latter. This mindset is reflected even in everyday conversations. Listen to an average person and you'll notice they talk about prices, sales, and things they must buy. Listen to a wealthy person and you'll notice they talk about ideas, returns, and value creation. One talks about expenses, the other about assets. One seeks entertainment, the other learning. One talks about others, the other talks to themselves. Robert Kiyosaki explained that most people confuse liabilities with assets. They think their house is an asset because it's worth a lot, but if they have to pay a mortgage, maintenance, taxes, and utilities every month, it's not an asset, it's a liability. The wealthy know this. They aren't seduced by the allure of appearances, but by the cash flow each thing generates. If something brings them money, it's an asset. If it takes money, it's a liability, no matter how beautiful or expensive it is. Imagine two neighboring families. Family A buys a new pickup truck on credit. Each month they pay a high monthly installment, plus fuel and insurance. Family B buys a used van and rents it out for ride-hailing services on weekends. The first family looks better but loses money. The second, though seemingly more modest, earns. 5 years later, the first family trades in another vehicle, and the second has 3 income-generating vehicles. That's transforming liabilities into assets. The rich don't fear debt, they use it wisely. Bad debt makes you poor, good debt makes you free. The poor borrow money to spend, the rich borrow money to produce. When the poor receive credit, they buy things that lose value. When the rich receive credit, they invest it in something that will generate a return. That's why, even in debt, the rich move forward. The poor, even debt-free, often fall behind. But it's not all about money, it's about mental energy. The poor person focuses their mind on solving immediate problems. How to pay the bill, how to survive this month. Their mind is so busy putting out fires that they can't build a future. The rich person, on the other hand, thinks in terms of systems. They ask themselves, what can I create today that will set me free tomorrow? While one tries to put out fires, the other designs an engine that never runs out. There's also an emotional aspect. The poor seek recognition, the rich seek results. One buys to impress, the other invests to get ahead. One goes into debt to maintain appearances, the other sacrifices to have the power of choice. That's why, while the poor person shows off their new watch, the rich person is quietly working on their next asset. The former's satisfaction lasts minutes, the latter's generations. The illusion of consumption is the system's most powerful weapon. It makes us believe that having more things equates to having more value. But every unnecessary purchase is another brick in the wall that separates you from your freedom. The wealthy understand that true wealth isn't seen, it's felt. It manifests as tranquility, free time, and the ability to decide without fear. They don't need to prove it, their lifestyle speaks for itself. There's an experiment that was done with 2 groups of people. One group was asked to imagine spending $1,000 on whatever they wanted. The other group was asked to imagine investing it in something that would generate income. The first group described immediate pleasure, clothes, travel, food. The second group described future freedom, a business, a musical instrument, a learning experience. A year later, the first group still had the same financial problems. The second group's situation had improved. What changes isn't the amount, but the intention behind using the money. The mental chasm between rich and poor isn't closed by physical effort, but by mental clarity. Wealth isn't about accumulating but about building flow. Every asset you generate, however small, is a seed that frees you a little more. Every liability you acquire binds you a little more. The game is simple. Eliminate what drains you, multiply what produces. And here's the paradox. Anyone can think like a rich person even without money. You just need to observe each decision and ask yourself, does this bring me closer to or further from my freedom? That question, repeated every day, changes your destiny. Because wealth begins when you stop working for money and start working for purpose. When you understand that you don't need more things but more awareness. And when you achieve that, the difference between rich and poor ceases to be economic and becomes a matter of vision. Chapter number 2. Understanding the language of money. If you want to be rich, you need to learn the language of money. It's a language that isn't taught in schools, but it dominates the world. Robert T. Kiyosaki. Money speaks, but few know how to listen. Every coin, every bill, every transaction is a silent conversation between your decisions and your future. Most people spend their entire lives working with money, earning it, spending it, fearing it, but without understanding its true meaning. It's like trying to build a house without knowing the blueprints. That's why financial education isn't about learning to save or avoid debt, but about understanding how money behaves, how it moves, how it responds to your choices, and above all, how it can work for you. Robert Kiyosaki sums it up in a simple yet transformative phrase. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. This basic and direct idea completely changes your perspective on life. Because what you thought was making you richer was actually making you poorer. What you thought was a symbol of success was a constant source of loss. Many people say, my house is my biggest asset. But if every month you have to pay the mortgage, maintenance, taxes, and utilities, is it really making you money? No. On the contrary, it's draining your income. And not because it's a bad investment, but because it's not yet generating cash flow. A real asset doesn't depend on you. It generates income even while you sleep. It could be a rental property, a business, a book, a patent, a digital channel, an investment, something that pays you without you having to be present. Liabilities, on the other hand, are masters of disguise. They present themselves as rewards, as trophies, a new car, an expensive watch, a luxury trip. All of that feels good in the moment, but over time you realize you're working harder just to maintain what you bought. The poor buy liabilities thinking they're assets. The rich buy assets and let them buy their liabilities. That's the difference. Think about this. If everything you own demands money or time to maintain, you're accumulating chains. But if what you own brings you money or frees up your time, you're building wings. That's the essence of the language of money. It's not about how much you have, but how it flows. Flow is the true indicator of wealth. You can own $1 million house and still be poor if the monthly payment drowns you. And you can own just a few small assets and be free if each one quietly works for you. Now stop for a moment and think, what things in your life generate income for you? And what things drain it? That simple mental exercise reveals more than any bank account. Most people don't know the answer because they've never thought about it that way. They believe that as long as they work hard, everything will be fine. But the truth is, you can work your whole life and still be stuck if you don't understand this simple equation. Money behaves predictably. It flows to those who understand it. If you don't speak its language, it slips through your fingers. It's like trying to hold water with your open hands. You can earn thousands and lose them just as quickly because you don't know how to manage them. That's why true financial education isn't about how much you earn, but about how much you keep and grow. And this is where the most dangerous trap of all comes in: lifestyle. Modern society has sold us the idea that living well is synonymous with spending more. We are taught to measure our worth by what we show, not by what we build. We are told that if you work hard, you deserve to indulge yourself, buy a new car, wear designer clothes, and flaunt your success. But financial ego is a silent enemy. It convinces you to spend money you don't have, on things you don't need, to impress people you don't care about. Your ego drives your purchases disguised as self-esteem. It tells you that you deserve that phone, that watch, that trip because you earned it. But every time you listen to it, you surrender a little more of your freedom. The irony is that the more you try to appear successful, the further you move away from actually being successful. True financial success isn't reflected in what you wear, but in what you can give up without sacrificing your lifestyle. It's being able to say, I don't need to buy this to feel good. The wealthy understand that every dollar has a purpose. They don't spend impulsively, they allocate. Every financial decision is a strategic move on the chessboard. Before buying, they ask themselves, does this give me cash flow or take it away? Does this bring me closer to freedom or tie me more tightly to the system? The poor, on the other hand, buy out of desire, out of emotion. They don't consider the consequences. They only seek the momentary relief of pleasure. That's why, while one builds wealth, the other accumulates debt. The language of money also has its emotional grammar. Fear, guilt, and ignorance are its most common pitfalls. Many don't invest because they fear losing. But by not investing, they lose more time. Others feel guilty about earning. They believe money is bad, that having it makes them selfish. But money only amplifies what you already are. If you are generous with money, you will be even more so. If you are fearful with money, you will be doubly so. That's why, before learning about investing, you need to reconcile yourself with the idea of abundance. A scarcity mindset sees limitations. An abundance mindset sees options. And the language of money adapts to that mindset. If you believe you can't, money obeys you. If you believe you can create, money follows you. That's why, when you learn to think like an investor, you stop asking yourself, can I afford it? And start asking, how can I make it profitable? That small change in words opens doors you never imagined before. Now, a quick mental exercise that can transform your relationship with money. Take a sheet of paper and make 2 columns. In one, write down everything you own that generates income, no matter how small. In the other, write down everything that drains your money month after month. Be honest. Include your house if you have a mortgage, your car if it consumes more than it generates, your subscriptions, your emotional expenses. Then look. If the liabilities column is longer, there's your answer. You don't need to earn more. You need to reorganize your cash flow. Every dollar you remove from that column brings you closer to freedom. The second step is even more powerful. Choose a liability and find a way to transform it into an asset. Do you own a car? Use it part-time to generate income. Do you have a spare room? Rent it out. Do you spend hours on social media? Create content, teach something. Everything you own can become an asset if you give it a purpose. What costs you today can pay you tomorrow. This is how the wealthy think. Not because they're smarter, but because they've learned to translate everyday decisions into financial language. Every expense is a word, every investment a phrase, every cash flow a story. And the story you tell with your money ultimately defines your destiny. If you don't understand that language, money will always seem scarce, unfair, and unattainable. But if you learn to speak it, you'll discover that money isn't a master, but a messenger. And the message is always the same: make me useful and I'll serve you forever. Money doesn't go to those who work the hardest, but to those who understand it best. And understanding it begins with listening to what it says. Because money doesn't shout, it whispers. It speaks to you in receipts, in interest payments, in the opportunities you miss, in the expenses you justify. Learning its language is learning to hear its voice before it slips away. And once you achieve that, life changes. You no longer see prices, you see returns. You no longer see debt, you see strategies. You no longer see scarcity, you see systems. Money ceases to be an enemy and becomes a partner. And when that happens, you stop working to survive, and you start working for freedom. Chapter number 3. The financial education you never received. From a young age, we were taught to study hard, get good grades, go to university, and land a stable job. That was the magic formula that promised security and success. But no one explained to us what success really meant. No one talked to us about money. At school, we learned about history, math, biology, grammar, but never about how the money that makes the world go round actually works. And it wasn't an oversight. It was a structural omission. The education system isn't designed to create free people, but to train efficient employees. They teach you to work for money, not to make money work for you. Robert Kiyosaki used to say that schools teach people to be good workers, but not good investors. And he was right. The system was created in an industrial era, where factories needed obedient labor, not independent thinkers. That's why we're trained to memorize, keep to schedules, and seek security, not to create, innovate, or take risks. The result is a society that values academic degrees more than financial intelligence. But the reality of the 21st century has changed. Today, degrees don't guarantee freedom, and student debt is the new modern-day slavery. Academic knowledge teaches you to solve problems within a set framework. Financial wisdom, on the other hand, teaches you to question that framework. It teaches you to think in terms of cash flow, profitability, and growth. The academic seeks a salary, the financier seeks a system. The academic studies to pass exams, the financier studies to invest. One seeks stability, the other expansion. That is the difference between someone who works for money and someone who uses money as a tool. Understanding this isn't an attack on education, but rather an invitation to complement it. Because formal education gives you information, but financial education gives you freedom. And the most curious thing is that you don't need a classroom to learn it. You find it in the right books, in the right conversations, in your own mistakes. Every financial decision you make is a practical lesson. But if you lack awareness, life will make you pay dearly for not having learned in time. Developing an investor mindset doesn't mean becoming an expert in the stock market or real estate, but rather thinking like an opportunity creator. An investor sees value where others see expense. They see possibilities where others see risk. While most see problems, the investor sees a potential asset. And this isn't a genetic ability, but a way of thinking that can be cultivated. It all starts with changing a question. Instead of saying, "I can't afford it," start saying, "How can I get it?" This simple mental shift forces you to think creatively, to explore options, to awaken your entrepreneurial spirit. The power of leverage is one of the concepts that most separates the wealthy from everyone else. The poor say, "I don't have money, so I can't invest." The wealthy say, "I don't have money, so who does, and how can I partner with them?" Leverage isn't just financial. It can also be time, knowledge, or relationships. It means using external resources to accelerate your results. If you learn to use leverage correctly, you can multiply your impact without multiplying your effort. Imagine you have an idea but not the funding. Instead of giving up, you partner with someone who does. They provide the capital, you provide the talent, and you both win. That's leverage. Or perhaps you use your free time to create a digital course, a book, or content that continues to generate income while you do other things. That's leverage too. The poor think in terms of effort. The rich think in terms of systems. Cash flow is another vital concept. It's not about how much you earn, but how your money flows through you. Many people earn good money but live in a cycle of scarcity because their cash flow always goes out faster than it comes in. It's like trying to fill a pool with holes. Positive cash flow occurs when your assets generate more income than your liabilities consume. When that happens, money stops being a worry and becomes an ally. A steady flow of money creates stability, and reinvestment creates growth. Every dollar that comes in can have three destinations: spending, saving, or multiplying. Spending gives you immediate pleasure, saving gives you temporary security, and investing gives you permanent freedom. That's why the wealthy don't spend first, they invest first. They let their assets pay for their luxuries. And that requires patience, discipline, and a long-term mindset. Reinvestment is the silent secret to expansion. When you earn, don't spend it all on enjoyment. Reinvest a portion in improving your business, increasing your knowledge, or diversifying your income. Each reinvestment is a seed that will later yield greater rewards. It's the difference between someone who wins once and someone who creates an endless source of wealth. Many of the biggest financial transformations in people's lives stem from knowledge, not luck. Luck might give you an opportunity, but knowledge allows you to seize it. There are countless stories of people who started from scratch and achieved financial independence simply by choosing to educate themselves financially. Let's take the example of a young man who worked a typical job, earning just enough to get by. Instead of spending his free time on entertainment, he decided to learn about small investments. He bought a Robert Kiyosaki book with his last savings, and that was his turning point. He started tracking his expenses, understood the difference between assets and liabilities, and gradually transformed his habits. Within a year, he launched a small digital business that generated passive income. After 5 years, he was no longer dependent on his job. His story isn't one of luck, but of awareness. Another inspiring story is that of a single mother who decided to study real estate. With no money to invest, she started by assisting a real estate agent simply to learn. She learned about profitability, rates, loans, and discovered how to leverage a small amount of capital. Over time, she managed to buy her first rental property with the help of a smart loan. Years later, she owned several income-generating properties. What changed wasn't her circumstances, but her mindset. True wealth doesn't begin with money, but with education. And not just any education, but the kind that teaches you to think like an owner, not an employee. When you understand that money is a tool, you stop being its slave. You begin to build systems that work for you. And then, freedom ceases to be a dream and becomes a natural consequence. Financial education also teaches you to lose without fear. Because there is no growth without mistakes. Every failed investment brings a lesson. The wealthy aren't afraid of losing, they're afraid of not learning. Every setback is an adjustment to their strategy. While the average person laments, they prepare. Because they know that knowledge is the most valuable asset of all. No one can take it away from you, and it always generates returns. The reason the education system ignores financial literacy is simple: control. It's easier to manage a society burdened by debt, dependent on wages and fearful of risk. But when you learn about money, you no longer need permission to move forward. You don't wait for the government or your boss to save you. You take control of your life. You become the protagonist. An investor's mindset isn't born in a classroom. It's born from curiosity. From that desire to understand how the real world works. From the decision to stop complaining and start taking action. Because in the end, money is nothing more than a tool. And like any tool, it can build or destroy depending on who uses it. So, if you're listening to this, you're already one step ahead. You're breaking the cycle of financial ignorance that has trapped millions. You're learning what you were never taught. That freedom isn't bought, it's built with knowledge, discipline, and vision. Learn, apply, and teach. That's the cycle of true abundance. Because when you share what you know, you don't lose wealth, you multiply it. And that's the final lesson of this chapter. Financial education doesn't just transform your wallet, it transforms your mind, your environment, and your destiny. Once you acquire it, no one can ever deceive you again with empty promises. Because you'll know that true power isn't in money, but in the knowledge that allows you to create it. Chapter number 4. The most common financial mistakes. One of the greatest enemies of financial freedom isn't a lack of money, but a lack of emotional control. Most people don't spend because they need to, but because they feel like it. They buy out of anxiety, boredom, a desire for approval, or an unconscious need to fill inner voids. And that emotional impulse disguised as a rational decision is the first step into the consumer trap. Buying based on emotion rather than purpose is like lighting a fire in a room full of gasoline. It may seem like a brief burst of satisfaction, but it leaves lasting damage. Advertising knows this better than anyone. It doesn't sell products, it sells feelings. It doesn't offer you a phone, it offers you status. It doesn't offer you a car, it offers you power. It doesn't offer you clothes, it offers you identity. But when the emotional effect fades, what remains is debt, emptiness, and frustration. The first common financial mistake is confusing pleasure with progress. Pleasure is instantaneous, progress is planned. When you buy something you don't need to impress people you don't care about, you're mortgaging your future for fleeting moments of validation. It's the modern illusion of success, appearances instead of building. And the worst part is that the system is designed to push you into this behavior. From a young age, you're taught that a person's worth lies in what they own, not what they produce. So, you grow up chasing symbols of wealth instead of real wealth. The second mistake is spending before you earn. This pattern, deeply ingrained in the culture of easy credit, creates a cycle of modern-day slavery. People get paid and they're already in debt. They anticipate income they don't yet have to finance luxuries they can't afford. And the result is a constant stream of debt, interest, and stress. The phrase, "I'll pay it in installments," is one of the most destructive self-deceptions. We turn unnecessary expenses into monthly obligations that silently accumulate. And when an emergency or a real investment opportunity arises, there's no money available. Money has a simple rule. If you spend it before you earn it, it becomes your master. If you manage it after you earn it, it becomes your servant. The wealthy understand this law and use it to their advantage. They spend after they invest. The poor spend before they receive. That's why, no matter how much their income increases, the mindset remains the same. Earning more only amplifies the magnitude of their mistakes. The difference between good debt and bad debt is another concept that can transform your life if you truly understand it. Bad debt is debt that takes money out of your pocket every month. Credit cards, consumer loans, financing things that depreciate. It's an invisible burden that steals your freedom. Good debt, on the other hand, is debt used strategically to generate more money than it costs. It's a tool, not a trap. If you take out a loan to buy a property that you rent out and that pays its own rent, that's good debt. If you take out a loan to start a profitable business, that can also be good debt. The secret is that the borrowed money works for you, not against you. But to use debt as leverage, you first need education and discipline. Without knowledge, all debt is dangerous. Most people use credit as an extension of their salary, not as a catalyst for wealth. They go into debt to maintain a lifestyle they can't afford, not to create a system that liberates them. And that pattern repeats itself generation after generation because financial education is still not part of the family culture. The false sense of success is another silent trap that keeps millions caught in the rat race. It's that urge to buy the latest car, the newest cell phone, or designer clothes just to project an image. But image doesn't pay bills, generate income, or give you freedom. Some live in houses that look like temples of success, but inside they're prisons of debt. People who travel on credit, eat at restaurants they can't afford, and are constantly trying to maintain a facade that suffocates them. Appearance is expensive, but authenticity pays off. Modern marketing sells status disguised as necessity. It convinces you that you need the latest thing to be someone. But what's truly powerful is what you don't see. The peace of mind that comes from not owing anyone, the control over your decisions, and the ability to say, I don't need that to feel good. That's true financial freedom. It's not about having more, but about needing less. Breaking free from the cycle of consumerism requires 3 clear and realistic steps. The first is awareness. You can't change what you can't see. Take an honest look at your finances. How much you earn, how much you spend, what you spend it on, and how much you actually have left. Don't lie to yourself. If your expenses increase at the same rate as your income, you're not progressing. You're just escalating your level of dependency. The second step is to create a plan for emotional control when it comes to money. Every purchase should be filtered through a purposeful lens. Ask yourself, does this improve my life in the long run? Does it generate value for me or just momentary satisfaction? Am I buying out of need or from emotional deprivation? If you learn to pause before spending, you'll save yourself years of regret. The third step is to redirect the flow of money toward asset creation. This isn't about depriving yourself, but about prioritizing. Every time you have money, set aside a portion to invest, however small. Invest in knowledge, in an idea, in something that can grow. Start with what you have. If you wait until you have a lot to invest, you'll never begin. Great investors started small, but they started. A practical example is Carlos, an employee who for years lived paycheck to paycheck. Every bonus he received was spent on unnecessary things. Clothes, parties, gadgets. Until one day he decided to track all his expenses for 3 months. He discovered that he was spending more than 30% of his salary on impulse purchases. He decided to change. He opened a separate investment account, started buying books on finance, and in 6 months, paid off half of his debts. 2 years later, he had his first digital asset, an online course that generated extra income. What changed wasn't his salary, but his awareness. Another example is Laura, a young woman who earned a good income but was always in debt. She lived by the idea that I deserve it. She bought things to celebrate achievements, to ease sadness, to distract herself. Until she understood that emotional spending was her enemy. She created a 3-day system. Whenever she wanted to buy something non-essential, she waited 3 days before doing so. In most cases, the urge disappeared. That simple habit changed her financial life. Breaking free from the cycle of consumption isn't quick, but it's possible. It requires honesty, discipline, and purpose. It's not about living in fear of spending, but about spending consciously. It's about using money as a tool for growth, not as emotional anesthesia. When you understand this, money ceases to be a problem and becomes a reflection of your values. Remember, financial freedom isn't built on high income, but on smart decisions. You can earn little and be free, or earn a lot and be a slave. The difference lies in how you manage your emotions, not your numbers. Because ultimately, finance isn't just about math, it's about psychology. And mastering your mind is the first step to mastering your money. Every financial mistake you make teaches you a valuable lesson, but only if you're willing to learn it. Don't punish yourself for what you did wrong. Be grateful for the opportunity to do things differently. If you can turn each stumble into a learning experience, you'll have gained something more valuable than money, the wisdom to avoid repeating your mistakes. And that wisdom, combined with action, will inevitably lead you to the freedom you so deeply desire. Chapter number 5. The real psychology of money. Money isn't just earned or spent, it's also felt. Behind every financial decision lies an emotion, a belief, and a personal story. The psychology of money is that invisible universe that determines how you think, how you react, and how you use your resources. No matter how much you earn, if your mind is programmed for fear, guilt, or scarcity, you'll always find a way to sabotage your own results. That's why some people, even after winning the lottery, end up penniless, while others with modest incomes manage to prosper. The problem was never the amount, but the mindset. From childhood, each of us unconsciously inherits a financial narrative. Those phrases you heard at home become subconscious commands. Money doesn't grow on trees. Rich people are selfish. You have to work hard to survive. Money doesn't buy happiness. These seemingly innocent statements shape how you perceive money for life. If you grew up watching your parents argue about money, you probably associate it with conflict. If you saw them suffer from a lack of it, you may have developed a fearful or anxious relationship with it. And if you were taught that desiring abundance is being greedy, you might feel guilty whenever things go well for you. Our culture also plays a profound role in this programming. In many Latin American countries, Money is imbued with morality. Poverty is considered synonymous with humility, and wealth with arrogance. Sacrifice is applauded, not prosperity. Those who suffer through their work are admired more than those who prosper through thought. Thus, without realizing it, we create a system that punishes abundance. And the more you internalize these beliefs, the harder it becomes to attract and retain wealth. Because your mind cannot sustain what your identity rejects. Fear of risk is another powerful obstacle. It stems from the desire for control, from that need for certainty before acting. But in the financial world, absolute certainty doesn't exist. Every decision involves a degree of uncertainty. The wealthy understand this and use it to their advantage. It's not that they aren't afraid, it's that they face it with knowledge. They know that the real risk isn't losing money but failing to learn. Fear, on the other hand, paralyzes most people. It makes many prefer a stable salary to the possibility of growth. And that apparent comfort is one of the most subtle traps. It feels safe, but it keeps you small. This fear is compounded by the guilt of winning. Some people, upon beginning to prosper, feel uneasy. They struggle to enjoy their success because they believe they are betraying their roots or abandoning their loved ones. This unconscious guilt leads them to sabotage their achievements. They spend more than necessary, make poor investments, or associate with the wrong people. Deep down, they feel they don't deserve more than others. But guilt is a learned emotion, not a truth. Winning doesn't make you a bad person. It gives you the opportunity to help others better, to inspire, to create. True humility lies not in complacency, but in sharing what you have achieved without guilt. A scarcity mindset is the deepest root of emotional and material poverty. It's that inner voice that tells you it's never enough. I can't. I don't have enough. I don't have enough. It lives in fear of loss, in constant comparison, in the habit of focusing on what's missing. This mindset not only limits your decisions but also robs you of the ability to see opportunities. When you think about scarcity, your brain goes into survival mode. You stop creating, you stop imagining. You only seek to endure. But no one gets rich by enduring. Abundance, on the other hand, is a form of consciousness. It doesn't depend on the money you have, but on the approach you choose. Creating an abundance mindset begins with deserving. You must deeply accept that you are worthy of prospering. That earning money honestly doesn't make you less spiritual or less human. That having more doesn't mean taking from someone, but rather multiplying what you can contribute. When your mind stops associating money with guilt or fear, it opens itself to the possibility of receiving. Abundance doesn't come to those who need it, but to those who are prepared to handle it. And that preparation begins with your thoughts. To develop financial confidence, you must practice active gratitude. This isn't about repeating empty phrases, but about recognizing what you already have as a foundation for growth. Every time you express gratitude for the little things, you train your mind to see opportunities instead of deficiencies. Gratitude isn't resignation, it's an awareness of abundance. It's saying, I have this and from here I can create more. Abundance also requires boundaries. Saying no to the unnecessary is as powerful as saying yes to a smart investment. Another key aspect of the psychology of money is its relationship to time. People with a scarcity mindset seek immediate gratification. They want the reward now, without process, without waiting. That's why they easily fall into traps like payday loans or schemes that promise instant wealth. In contrast, those with an abundance mindset understand that money grows with time, patience, and consistency. They don't despair for immediate results. They focus on building systems that generate constant value. Reprogramming your financial outlook requires specific mental exercises. One of them is emotional financial self-analysis. For 1 week, write down every purchase you make, but not just the amount. Note how you felt before and after making it. You'll discover surprising patterns. Perhaps you shop to relieve anxiety, to feel in control, or to reward yourself for something. When you become aware of these impulses, you can begin to replace them with rational decisions. Another exercise is positive self-talk. Change phrases like, I can't afford it, to, how can I create it? This simple reframing activates your creativity and takes you out of victim mode. It puts you in control. You can also practice mindful visualization. Imagine every day what your life would be like with financial stability, not from a fantasy, but from a real feeling. Imagine paying your bills without stress, investing with confidence, enjoying life without guilt. The brain doesn't distinguish between a real experience and a vivid visualization. If you repeat it with emotion, it will start looking for ways to make it a reality. A deeper exercise is to examine your family's beliefs about money. Ask yourself, what did you hear about wealthy people when you were a child? What emotions did money evoke in your home? Were you taught to save or to fear it? Write down those answers. Then, consciously decide which of those beliefs serve you and which you need to let go of. You are not condemned by your financial past. You are conditioned. And the difference is that conditioning can be reprogrammed. Finally, practice the symbolic act of letting go. Each month, donate or give away something of value, not out of obligation but out of trust. The act of letting go activates the energy of flow. It demonstrates that you trust in abundance, not in withholding. Those who accumulate out of fear end up trapped in their own scarcity. Those who share with purpose create an inevitable cycle of return. The psychology of money, ultimately, isn't just about material wealth, but about inner balance. When you understand your emotions, when you heal your limiting beliefs and choose to think from a place of abundance, money ceases to be a source of anxiety and becomes an extension of your purpose. You begin to attract opportunities, people, and experiences that resonate with this new frequency. Because abundance isn't something you seek, it's something you tune into. And when you reach that point of emotional clarity, you no longer need to chase money. Money starts seeking you. Chapter number 6. From a culture of spending to a culture of wealth. For generations, most people have been raised to spend, not to build wealth. Consumer culture has infiltrated modern society so deeply that personal worth seems to be measured by what you own, not what you create. From a young age, we learn that success translates into visible possessions. The newest phone, designer clothes, the latest car. We are taught to admire the symbols of money, but rarely taught to understand how it actually works. This is the root of the spending culture. A mindset geared toward immediate gratification, external validation, and neglecting long-term financial purpose. True wealth, on the other hand, is cultivated with a different philosophy. The culture of wealth, a way of thinking and living in which every financial decision is guided by vision, discipline, and purpose. Family influence is the starting point. Every home transmits a way of relating to money, sometimes without words. In many families, children grow up observing behaviors that normalize impulsive spending or a lack of planning. They see their parents go into debt to show off, spend to celebrate, or struggle to make ends meet. However, the most important thing is not what is said, but what is repeated. When a child hears phrases like, "It's not enough," "You have to go into debt to have anything," or "Money disappears quickly," they internalize the idea that money is scarce, that financial life is a constant struggle, and that the only way to enjoy life is by consuming. This programming, transmitted unintentionally, creates adults who repeat the same patterns, even with higher incomes. On a social level, the culture of spending is reinforced by advertising and the environment. The media celebrates superficial luxury and extravagance as a symbol of success. Social media amplifies this illusion. Photos, trips, restaurants, products, everything seems to be a silent competition to see who lives the best life. But what isn't shown is the reality behind that image. Debt, anxiety, and a profound disconnect from financial purpose. This phenomenon has created generations that know how to spend, but don't know how to invest. That crave abundance, but don't understand the sacrifice that precedes it. Modern society rewards immediacy, and that has weakened the most powerful virtue of progress, patience. In contrast, some cultures have cultivated a completely different mindset for centuries. If we look at Eastern models, such as those of India, Japan, and China, we notice common patterns that explain their long-term stability and prosperity. In Japan, for example, saving is not an obligation but a sign of respect. From a young age, children learn the value of order, planning, and consistency. Saving money is not seen as stinginess but as wisdom. Economic discipline is integrated into daily life as a moral principle. In India, the family is seen as an institution of mutual economic support. Each generation works not only for its own individual well-being but also to strengthen the foundation that sustains the next. Saving is taught not out of fear of the future, but out of a desire to leave a legacy. In China, the philosophy of money is deeply connected to the notion of balance. The concept of feng shui applies not only to physical space but also to the energetic flow of prosperity. Saving, investing, and spending consciously are acts of harmony, not sacrifice. The result is a mindset in which wealth is associated not with excess but with stability and continuity. These cultures do not become wealthy by accident but through consistency. Their financial education is based on values that transcend numbers: respect, patience, responsibility, and vision. However, it's not about copying these models verbatim, but about learning from them and adapting them to our own reality. The key lies in balancing Eastern discipline with the passion and creativity that characterize Latin American cultures. We can adopt the habit of saving without losing joy, Learn to plan without giving up enjoyment. Transforming the culture of spending doesn't mean eliminating pleasure, but redefining it. Enjoying without destroying, celebrating without going into debt, investing without fear. Changing the collective mindset is a generational process. Breaking patterns of inherited poverty requires first acknowledging their existence. Many of us carry within us a legacy of emotional and economic deprivation. Our grandparents lived through wars, crises, or scarcity. Our parents grew up fearing the loss of everything, and we inherited their financial anxiety. But this chain can be broken. It's not about blaming the past, but about healing it with knowledge. The first step is learning what we were never taught: how money works, how to grow it, and how to keep it moving. The second step is teaching, so that the next generation doesn't repeat the mistakes of the previous one. In every family there's a turning point, a person who decides to change the narrative. That person could be you. Perhaps you were raised in an environment where hard work was valued, but planning was non-existent, where living paycheck to paycheck was paramount and saving was considered a luxury. However, today you have access to information, tools, and education that your parents didn't have. Every time you choose to save instead of spending, to read instead of being distracted, to invest instead of going into debt, you're breaking centuries of conditioning. You're teaching your mind and your family that wealth isn't a privilege, it's a consequence of applied knowledge. Teaching financial literacy at home doesn't require degrees, just awareness. Start by talking about money openly and honestly. Explain to your children what income, expenses, savings, and investments are. Show them that money isn't good or bad, it's simply directed energy. Teach them the value of work, but also the value of time. Teach them that money should serve them, not control them. You can create simple exercises. Give them a weekly allowance and ask them to divide it among 3 categories: enjoyment, savings, and investment. This way they'll learn that financial balance isn't about deprivation, but about making smart choices. It's also crucial to teach them by example. Children learn more from what they see than from what they hear. If they see you spend impulsively, they'll understand that money is fleeting. If they see you saving and talking about goals, they'll understand that money is a tool. If they see you going into debt for unnecessary things, they'll replicate that behavior. But if they see you building, planning, and investing, they'll grow up with the certainty that abundance is attainable. Breaking free from the culture of overspending means redefining the concept of wealth. It's not just about having money, but about having choices. True financial freedom comes when you can make decisions about your life without being driven by fear or circumstances. It's when your money works for you, not the other way around. This freedom begins in the mind, is strengthened by habits, and is solidified through education. Therefore, teaching, practicing, and passing on the culture of wealth is not a selfish act, but an act of love. Every conscious decision you make, saving, investing, educating yourself, not only changes your life but also the destiny of those who come after you. Future generations will not remember how much you spent, but what you built. They will not inherit your debts, but your wisdom. That is the true legacy, transforming knowledge into inheritance, discipline into prosperity, and abundance into culture. When a wealth mindset becomes part of your identity, money ceases to be a worry and becomes a vehicle for serving, creating, and enjoying. A culture of wealth isn't a destination, it's a way of life. And when you choose to live from this perspective, you're sending a silent yet powerful message to the universe: I'm ready to manage more, to share more, to grow more. Then, money stops being an end in itself and becomes a reflection of your inner evolution. Chapter number 7. The Practical Path to Creating Assets. Building assets isn't a privilege reserved for millionaires. It's an accessible path for anyone who decides to take responsibility for building their freedom. For years, the system has taught us to work for money, not to make money work for us. But true independence begins when we understand that money isn't an end in itself, but a tool. And that tool can multiply when it's placed in the right places, with the right mindset and the right strategy. At this stage of the financial journey, the goal isn't just to save or spend less, but to learn how to build assets. Income streams that generate money consistently even when you're not working. There are different types of assets, and each one corresponds to a different way of thinking, acting, and taking risks. The first group is financial assets such as stocks, bonds, index funds, or certificates of deposit. These instruments represent the most classic way to generate returns on capital. For example, when you invest in the stock of a solid company, you are buying a small part of its future. If that company grows, you grow with it. But the key is not in predicting the market, but in understanding the principle of cash flow. A financial asset must generate recurring income or increase in value over time. Therefore, before investing, the question should not be, how much can I earn? But how predictable and sustainable is this cash flow? The second type is intellectual assets. Ideas, knowledge, or talents that are transformed into valuable products or services. In the digital age, this type of asset has become the most powerful and scalable. A book, an online course, a patent, a song, or even a YouTube channel can become a source of passive income if properly structured. Intellectual assets have a unique advantage. They are not depleted by sharing. The more people who consume them, the more value they can generate. Many have transformed a personal skill, teaching, writing, designing, communicating, into a system that generates income 24/7. The key is to shift from the mindset of an employee, my time for money, to the mindset of a creator, my knowledge for perpetual income. The third type is digital assets, a natural evolution of intellect and technology. Networks, websites, applications, online stores, and digital products are now gold mines for those who understand how they work. Imagine a store that never closes, serving thousands of people in different countries while you sleep, or an affiliate platform that pays you commissions every time someone makes a purchase through your link. Digital assets eliminate geographical barriers and multiply opportunities. The initial investment is usually lower than for traditional assets, but it demands knowledge and consistency. It requires learning about automation, marketing, and scalability. The reward, however, is freedom from time and geographical constraints. Another fundamental pillar is real estate. Although it requires a larger investment, it's one of the oldest and most stable ways to generate passive income. Buying a property to rent, participating in a real estate investment fund, or even renovating and reselling are proven strategies for building long-term wealth. What matters isn't the size of the property, but the cash flow it generates. A house that generates more income than it costs to maintain is an asset. One that requires constant cash flow to sustain is a liability in disguise. That's why before investing in real estate, you must master the golden rule: positive cash flow. The positive cash flow rule is the compass that separates a good investment from a bad one. It means that every asset you acquire should generate more income than it consumes. If you buy an apartment and the rental income exceeds the mortgage, taxes, and maintenance, that asset is working for you. But if the opposite is true, it doesn't matter how much it's worth in the long run. Today it's draining your cash flow. Wealth isn't built on expensive properties or large businesses, but on small, consistent decisions that add up to a steady stream of cash flow. The magic of positive cash flow is that it allows you to reinvest, grow, and eventually break free from the paycheck cycle. The last type of asset, and probably the most transformative, is business assets. Creating a business doesn't necessarily mean building a large company. It can be something as simple as offering a service, opening an online store, or building a personal brand. The essential thing is to structure it so that it functions without your constant presence. If your business depends on you every day, it's not an asset yet. It's an upgraded job. But when you build systems, automate processes, and delegate tasks, your business becomes a cash flow machine. Every customer, product, or sale represents another piece in the gears of freedom. One of the biggest limiting beliefs is thinking you need a lot of money to start investing or building assets. In reality, what you need is the right mindset and education. Many great investors started small, saving a portion of their salary, reinvesting their profits, or taking advantage of small opportunities that others overlooked. The key is to start even with the bare minimum. If you wait until you have plenty to invest, you'll never begin, because abundance comes precisely as a result of starting. Imagine setting aside a small amount each month, even if it's just $20 or $50, to invest in something that will generate a return. It could be an investment fund, a low-cost stock, or a digital project. At first, the results will seem insignificant, but what truly grows is your mindset. You learn to analyze, compare, and make decisions based on data, not emotions. And that learning is the first real asset you build, your financial intelligence. As your passive income starts to flow, the most important phase arrives: reinvesting. Many make the mistake of spending their first earnings on immediate gratification. But true wealth builders use them as fuel to create more assets. It's a cycle: invest, collect, reinvest, scale. That's the formula for those who achieve financial freedom. For example, a digital creator can reinvest their earnings in advertising to attract more clients. A homeowner can use the rent from one property to buy another. An investor can reinvest their stock dividends in more stocks. Growth happens when you understand that money isn't saved, it's multiplied. Automation is the next step. In today's world, tools exist that allow you to manage assets with almost no human intervention. From automated investment platforms to 24/7 online sales systems, Technology has democratized wealth creation. What once required dozens of employees can now be managed from a phone. Learning to use automation not only saves time but also amplifies results. But remember, no system replaces strategic thinking. Automating without understanding is like delegating without supervision, a recipe for failure. To solidify growth, scaling is vital. Scaling means expanding what already works. If you have a profitable product, create a related one. If a customer is satisfied, offer them more value. If an investment is generating returns, find ways to replicate it. The common mistake is to become scattered, jumping from opportunity to opportunity without delving deeply into any of them. True asset builders focus, optimize, and then multiply. Practical examples abound. An employee who decided to allocate 10% of their salary to a small online business ended up generating more income than from their main job. A teacher who recorded their classes and sold them as a digital course multiplied their time 1,000-fold. A couple who bought a rundown apartment, renovated it, and rented it out transformed debt into a steady income stream. In all cases, the pattern is the same: vision, action, patience, and reinvestment. Building assets isn't just about making more money, it's about gaining freedom. It's about moving from living with anxiety to living with purpose. It's about ceasing to work out of necessity and starting to work by choice. And it all begins with a decision, to stop being a consumer of liabilities and become a creator of assets. That's the true turning point. When you choose to build instead of spend, your financial life changes, and with it, your destiny. Money ceases to be an obstacle and becomes an ally. Because in the end, wealth isn't measured by what you have, but by what you are capable of creating, maintaining, and multiplying even when you're not around. Chapter number 8. Investor Mindset versus Consumer Mindset. True wealth begins in the mind long before it appears in your wallet. That's the fundamental difference between an investor and a consumer. They both use the same money, live in the same world, and face the same opportunities, but they think in radically different ways. While consumers spend driven by emotion or the desire for immediate gratification, investors act guided by logic, purpose, and a long-term vision. Consumers ask, how much does it cost? Investors ask, how much will it generate? And that simple difference in approach is what determines whether a person will always be chasing money or whether they will one day make money chase them. A consumer sees money as an end in itself. They work, earn, and spend, repeating this cycle endlessly. Every penny that arrives in their account already has a purpose. Clothes, entertainment, debts, or luxuries. Their mind is programmed to satisfy needs, not to build. In contrast, an investor sees money as a tool, a means to create more value. They don't think in terms of spending but of returns. Every coin that leaves their pocket must have a strategic reason, either to improve their knowledge, create an income stream, or strengthen their financial system. Their relationship with money is not emotional, it's rational, almost scientific. Investors don't necessarily earn more money than consumers, but they manage it with a different kind of intelligence. Before making a purchase, they ask themselves 3 essential questions: what return can I expect? What are the associated risks? And what is the long-term profitability? These 3 questions form the triad of financial thinking. Let's examine them in detail. First, the return. Every expense or investment should generate some kind of return, whether financial, intellectual, or emotional. For example, buying a finance book might seem like an expense, but if that knowledge helps you improve your decision-making and increase your income, it becomes an investment with exponential returns. Similarly, paying for a digital tool that saves you hours of work each week isn't an expense. It's a return on time, and time also has financial value. Investors see returns even where others only see price. Then there's risk. Every financial transaction involves a degree of uncertainty, but investors don't fear it. They assess it. Consumers avoid risk, but ironically, they expose themselves to a greater one, the risk of never growing. Spending without analyzing is also a risk, only invisible. Investors seek to understand possible scenarios before acting. If they invest in a stock, they study the company. If they start a business, they analyze the market. If they lend money, they evaluate the borrower's ability to repay. They don't rely on luck. They rely on the numbers. This difference in mindset allows them to move forward prudently, but without becoming paralyzed. Finally, there's profitability, the metric that defines whether a decision was worthwhile. For an investor, profitability isn't always measured in immediate cash. Sometimes it's measured in reputation, learning, or expanded opportunities. For example, working on a pro bono project can be profitable if it opens doors to strategic contacts. Or learning a new skill can be highly profitable even if it doesn't pay you immediately. Consumers seek instant gratification. Investors seek cumulative results. This difference in approach manifests itself in every aspect of life. The consumer sees a car as a status symbol. The investor sees it as a means of transportation, or better yet, as a potential asset if they can rent it out or use it to generate income. The consumer buys a $1,000 phone to show it off. The investor buys it only if they use it as a productivity tool or for content creation. The consumer invests in appearances. The investor invests in skills. One seeks approval, the other seeks autonomy. The investor understands that money is energy that must flow, but intelligently. They don't hoard it out of fear, but rather put it to work purposefully. They allocate it in different areas. Some for security, savings, some for growth, investment, some for enjoyment, conscious pleasure, and some for contribution, impact. In this way they achieve balance and control. Their mind is trained to think in terms of percentages, not impulses. When they receive money, they don't ask what they can buy, but how they can make it grow. One of the most powerful habits of an investor mindset is turning every expense into an opportunity for value. This doesn't mean eliminating pleasure or comfort, but rather making every decision financially sound. For example, if you pay for a gym membership, it's not an expense, but an investment in your health, which will allow you to have more energy and productivity. If you buy a computer, look for one that will help you generate projects, income, or learning. If you travel, turn it into an experience of growth, learning, or networking. Every expense can be transformed into an investment if you make it consciously and purposefully. A practical exercise to train this mindset is to analyze your financial transactions for a month. Take a sheet of paper or an app and record everything you spend. Then categorize each transaction into 2 columns, expense or investment. But don't base your classification on the type of product, but rather on the outcome it generates. For example, an online course is an investment if you use it, but an expense if you forget about it after buying it. A dinner out can be an expense if you're only looking for distraction, but an investment if it becomes a valuable connection. This exercise will force you to think strategically and, little by little, will reveal how many opportunities you're letting slip by due to a lack of awareness. The most profound change occurs when you begin to apply this investment mindset not just to money, but to everything: your time, your relationships, your attention. A consumer invests hours in entertainment that leaves no lasting impact. An investor dedicates time to learning, creating, or connecting with uplifting people. The consumer seeks instant gratification. The investor cultivates patience. And that patience is their secret weapon. While the world chases fads and trends, the investor observes, analyzes, and acts when market emotions subside. Adopting an investor mindset also means changing the way you talk to yourself. Stop saying, "I can't afford it," and start asking yourself, "How can I generate it?" That simple question sparks financial creativity. When you limit yourself mentally, your brain stops looking for solutions. When you challenge yourself, innovation is activated. Great investors aren't those with the most money, but those with the most ideas and the determination to turn them into results. Another essential principle is understanding that money amplifies who you already are. If you are disciplined, you will become more prosperous. If you are impulsive, you will become more indebted. That's why inner work is just as important as external strategy. An investor's mindset is strengthened by self-knowledge, reflection, and emotional control. Before investing in a business, invest in your mind. Before seeking profitability, seek clarity. Investors don't fear crises. They see them as opportunities in disguise. While consumers panic and cut back on spending, investors analyze and buy assets at low prices. While some complain about the economy, others take advantage of market restructuring. This contrarian mindset is what separates those who react to the moment from those who control it. Adopting an investor mindset doesn't mean eliminating enjoyment or becoming cold about money, but rather reconciling emotion with strategy. It means enjoying life while building stability, spending consciously and with pleasure, but knowing that every decision contributes to your independence. Money ceases to be a source of stress and becomes a silent ally working alongside you. Ultimately, the path to financial freedom doesn't depend on how much you earn, but on how you think every time you spend. Every bill that leaves your wallet can become a building block for your future or a drain on your energy. The difference lies in your mindset. If you begin to see money not as something that disappears, but as something that moves strategically, you'll notice that abundance ceases to be a goal and becomes a natural state. Because the true investor doesn't accumulate money, they accumulate wisdom, and with it, they learn to ensure that money never stops flowing to them. Chapter number 9. Building your financial freedom. Financial freedom isn't a final destination, but a conscious process of inner and outer transformation. It's the ability to choose how you live, how you invest your time, and what purpose guides your decisions. Many people believe that financial freedom is simply about having a lot of money, but it actually goes much further. It's about having control over your life. Money is just one of the tools that allows you to exercise that freedom. When your mind and your finances work in alignment, you enter a state where money ceases to be a worry and becomes a strategic ally. That's the point where you no longer work for money, but rather money works for you. There are 3 fundamental levels of freedom: time, money, and purpose. The first, time freedom, means being able to decide what you do with your days. It's when you stop trading hours for money and start building systems that generate income without your constant presence. This is the first step toward true independence. Many work from dawn till dusk, trapped in an endless cycle of effort, without realizing that the most valuable thing they're spending isn't their money, but their time, a resource that can never be recovered. Time freedom arrives when you manage to create income streams that continue while you sleep, when your clock is no longer an enemy, but a tool to enjoy life your way. The second level is financial freedom. This is the point where your passive income covers all your monthly expenses. You no longer depend on a salary or job insecurity because your assets, investments, businesses, properties, or automated income streams sustain your lifestyle. Reaching this level doesn't require being a millionaire, but rather having a system that works efficiently and consistently. The secret lies in smart management and discipline. It's not about how much you earn, but how much you maintain, how much you grow, and how you make every resource work for you. The third and highest level is freedom of purpose. This is when you no longer need to work out of financial necessity, but out of vocation, a desire to contribute, or a passion. It's the moment when your decisions aren't based on the fear of losing money, but on the desire to make an impact. Those who reach this level understand that true wealth isn't in the bank account, but in the ability to use money to create meaning. Freedom of purpose transforms money into a vehicle for expansion, not worry. It's the stage where you stop asking yourself, how much can I earn? And start asking yourself, how many people can I serve? To build this freedom step by step, you need to measure your financial progress month by month. What isn't measured doesn't improve. Most people avoid reviewing their finances because they fear what they'll find, but awareness is the first step toward control. Every month, conduct a personal financial review. Analyze your income, expenses, debts, and investments. Calculate your net worth, the difference between what you own and what you owe, and observe how it evolves over time. Don't focus solely on the absolute numbers, but on the trend. If your net worth is steadily growing, even slightly, you're making progress. If it stagnates or declines, you need to adjust your strategy. A simple way to measure your progress is to divide your money into 4 categories: security, growth, freedom, and purpose. The first, security, covers your basic expenses: food, housing, healthcare, and transportation. The second, growth, represents the money you invest to generate more income. The third, freedom, includes your savings and passive assets that bring you closer to independence. And the fourth, purpose, encompasses your personal contributions or projects that give meaning to your life. Each month, observe how the percentage you allocate to each category changes. Over time, you'll see that your money begins to reflect your vision and priorities. Financial progress is built on the snowball effect. At first, it seems slow, but with discipline and consistency, the results begin to multiply exponentially. Every asset you acquire, every investment you make, every debt you reduce, contributes to the cumulative growth of your wealth. This effect accelerates when you reinvest your earnings. Instead of spending your initial profits, multiply them. For example, if you invest in an asset that generates monthly income, use that income to acquire another asset, and then another. Over time, your money will begin to generate more money, and that is the essence of financial freedom, creating a self-sustaining cycle. Many underestimate the power of compound growth because they expect immediate results. But true investors think in terms of decades, not weeks. They know that a small action, consistently repeated, can build a fortune. If you save and invest a fixed percentage of your income each month, however small, in a few years you'll have a solid financial safety net. Compound growth applies not only to money but also to knowledge and mindset. Every book read, every mistake learned from, every inspiring conversation adds invisible layers of value to your life. Patience is the key that transforms a seed into a tree. To reach the point where money works for you, you need to create smart financial systems. A system is a structure that operates with minimal human intervention, automatically or semi-automatically. For example, setting up automatic monthly savings and investment transfers. or creating a digital business that generates income even when you're not around, or automating your collections and invoicing. Each system you implement frees up time and mental energy. The ultimate goal is for your passive income to exceed your active expenses, creating a steady cash flow that sustains your lifestyle without relying on daily work. Think of your finances as an ecosystem. Each part has a role. Your investments generate income, your savings ensure security, your spending reflects priorities, and your knowledge expands your opportunities. If you maintain a balance between them, the system becomes self-sustaining. When you achieve that balance, you'll feel a profound sense of control and serenity, because you'll know that even if you temporarily stop working, your money will continue to flow. That's when anxiety disappears and freedom begins. But financial freedom isn't just about accumulating assets. It also involves eliminating what drains your energy and resources. Unnecessary debt, impulsive spending, subscriptions you don't use, habits that keep you stuck. Every leak of money is a leak of energy. Review your finances with brutal honesty and cut anything that doesn't add real value. True abundance doesn't come when you have more, but when you learn to need less and make the most of what you already have. As you move forward, remember that purpose is what gives wealth meaning. Money without direction becomes empty. Constantly ask yourself, why do I want to be financially free? Perhaps to spend more time with your family, to travel, to help others, to create something that transcends. That vision is your compass. Without purpose, freedom becomes an empty luxury. With purpose, it transforms into a creative force. Financial freedom isn't a utopia reserved for a select few. It's the logical consequence of a disciplined mind, a clear strategy, and a firm purpose. It begins with small decisions. Saving intentionally, investing wisely, constantly learning, and maintaining patience. Day by day, you'll build a system that will free you from financial dependence and allow you to live life to the fullest. Imagine waking up every morning without the pressure of the clock or the urgency of paying bills, knowing your income flows naturally. Imagine being able to dedicate your time to what you love, without worrying about surviving. This vision isn't an impossible dream. It's the inevitable result of someone who chooses to think and act like the architect of their own freedom. Because money doesn't buy freedom. It's built by your mind, your discipline, and your purpose. And when those three align, you no longer work just to live. You live to create. Chapter number 10. Living like a rich person, thinking like a rich person. Being rich isn't always about the size of your bank account, but about the quality of your mind, your decisions, and your inner peace. True wealth isn't measured in numbers, but in freedom, purpose, and fulfillment. You can have millions and feel empty, or have just enough and feel immensely abundant. Living like a rich person doesn't mean being wasteful, but living with an awareness of value, knowing that everything you have, every experience you choose, and every person around you represents an emotional, spiritual, or financial investment. Thinking like a rich person means understanding that money isn't the end goal, but a means to create a more meaningful and fulfilling life. For years, society has confused the concept of wealth with ostentation. We believe that being rich means owning luxury cars, expensive watches, and enormous houses. But these symbols in and of themselves don't represent success. Often they are masks for insecurity. Those who constantly need to prove their wealth are those who don't yet truly feel it. The truly wealthy don't need to impress anyone because their abundance doesn't depend on external validation. They live in balance, enjoy life without guilt, and share without fear. That is the essence of conscious wealth. Financial minimalism emerges as an intelligent response to the trap of modern consumerism. It's not about living in deprivation, but about simplifying your finances and lifestyle to focus on what truly matters. The financial minimalist doesn't buy less out of obligation, but because they understand that true abundance lies in clarity. Every unnecessary item, every impulsive expense, every unnecessary debt is an anchor that prevents you from moving forward. When you choose to live with purpose, you eliminate the noise and free up space for what truly matters. Paradoxically, the less you need, the freer you are. In today's world, where advertising constantly bombards us with messages of more is better, adopting a minimalist mindset is almost an act of rebellion. The truly wealthy don't chase things. They chase experiences. They don't seek to accumulate objects, but rather moments that nourish their soul. They prefer to invest in knowledge, travel, health, relationships, and free time rather than in appearances. And the most curious thing is that, by doing so, their wealth grows naturally. Because money flows to those who know how to manage it with emotional intelligence. Being rich isn't about mindless spending. It's about spending wisely. Every purchase, every investment, and every financial decision should answer one key question. Does this bring me closer to or further from my freedom? If it brings you closer, do it with conviction. If it takes you further away, you don't need it. That simple reflection is the filter that separates the consumer from the wealth creator. While many seek instant gratification, those who think like the wealthy seek long-term returns. They understand that lasting satisfaction comes from growth, not consumption. A clear example is that of people who, upon increasing their income, automatically upgrade their lifestyle. They change their car, their house, their phone, their clothes, without considering that they are also increasing their liabilities. The truly wealthy don't succumb to that impulse. Before increasing their spending, they raise their investment level. They first ensure that their assets generate enough cash flow to cover any whim. They live comfortably but not enslaved by luxury. They know how to enjoy success without losing their common sense. Another profound difference between living like the rich and merely appearing to be rich lies in intention. The one who pretends lives for others. The one who is truly rich lives for themselves. One seeks approval, the other peace. One displays, the other builds. And building takes time, discipline, and vision. True wealth is built quietly, far from applause, in the daily decisions few see. Saving when everyone else is spending, studying when others are resting, investing when others are afraid. That is the path of the rich person. An inner journey that transforms the mind before the bank account. Living like a wealthy person also means enjoying life with gratitude. Some people, even with a lot of money, live in constant anxiety, fearing the loss of what they have. A wealthy mindset isn't afraid of loss because it knows how to create again. It understands that money comes and goes, but knowledge and mindset remain. When you know how to generate value, you're never in real danger because your mind becomes your most powerful asset. That's why those who think like the wealthy focus on developing skills, relationships, and vision. Money is simply the inevitable result of their personal growth. Maintaining abundance without losing humility is another essential trait. Humility isn't denying your achievements, but recognizing that you can always learn more. It's understanding that success doesn't make you superior, only more responsible. Money amplifies who you already are. If you're generous, it will make you more generous. If you're selfish, it will make you more stingy. That's why cultivating a mindset of service and gratitude is vital. Those who live with gratitude never lose perspective because they understand that every financial achievement is an opportunity to share, inspire, and multiply well-being. The truly wealthy don't compete, they collaborate. They don't envy, they admire. They don't destroy, they create. Their wealth isn't based on subtracting from others, but on adding value to the world. Instead of saying, there isn't enough for everyone, they think, how can I create more for everyone? This expansive mindset is what differentiates the rich from the poor, not circumstances but their way of thinking. The poor see limitations, the rich see possibilities. The poor spend to impress, the rich invest to grow. The poor fear losing, the rich trust in their ability to rebuild. Adopting a wealthy mindset also means letting go of the fear of money. Many people, due to upbringing or culture, associate money with guilt, ambition, or corruption. But money in essence is neutral. It simply amplifies the intentions of the heart. If you learn to see it as energy for exchange, you can use it wisely. Money doesn't change people, it reveals them. That's why those who have worked on their inner selves are not dominated by it. They use money purposefully without idolizing or despising it. Enjoying life without ostentation is an art few master. It's being able to sit in an expensive restaurant without feeling superior, or travel in economy class without feeling inferior. It's having freedom of choice, not the need to prove anything. The mentally rich person doesn't measure their worth by their possessions, but by their peace. They know that true luxury is tranquility, health, independence, and authentic relationships. They live with inner abundance, and that's why the universe trusts them more. Living and thinking like the wealthy is ultimately about balancing gratitude and ambition. Gratitude keeps you humble, ambition keeps you moving forward. One without the other is incomplete. If you're only ambitious, you become a slave to success. If you're only grateful, you can fall into complacency. But when you combine both, you move forward with serenity. You work from a place of abundance, not lack. And that's the secret of the truly wealthy. They don't work to make money, they work to grow, to serve, and to live in alignment with their purpose. Thus, living like a rich person doesn't mean having more, but needing less to feel fulfilled. It doesn't mean possessing, but enjoying. It doesn't mean showing off, but experiencing. It doesn't mean accumulating, but contributing. When your life is built on this awareness, each day becomes an act of wealth. Because true abundance isn't in what you have, but in what you are able to enjoy, share, and leave as a legacy. And when you reach that point, you realize that you no longer seek to be rich, you simply already are. Conclusion: your new financial identity. You are the result of your decisions, not your salary. This simple yet powerful phrase encapsulates the principle that separates mediocrity from greatness, lack from abundance, mere survival from true freedom. Right now, your financial life reflects exactly the decisions you've made up to this point: how you spend, how you think, how you value time and money. It's not your boss, your local economy, or your family that defines your financial destiny. 2. Every thought, every purchase, every investment, or every excuse is a vote toward the future you're building. And the good news is, you can always change course. Your new financial identity isn't born from luck or an external opportunity. It's born within you, the moment you decide to take complete control of your financial life. It's not about earning more money, but about thinking differently about money. Because money doesn't follow those who desire it, but those who are prepared to manage it wisely. If money has been a source of stress, fear, or conflict until now, it's time to reprogram that relationship. You can't attract what you unconsciously reject. Many say they want abundance, but deep down they feel guilty for having it or afraid of losing it. That's why real financial transformation begins in the mind, not in the bank account. Imagine for a moment that your relationship with money is a human relationship. How have you treated it? With love and respect, or with indifference and frustration? Money responds to the energy with which you manage it. If you spend it mindlessly, it slips away. If you save it out of fear, it stagnates. But if you use it purposefully, it multiplies. Reprogramming your mind means recognizing that money is a reflection of your level of consciousness. The more conscious you are, the freer you become. Every thought of scarcity generates impulsive decisions. Every thought of abundance generates opportunities. From now on, stop thinking like money's employee and start thinking like its partner. Money is neither your enemy nor your master. It's your tool. You don't need more working hours, but more clarity and strategy. Most people spend their lives chasing money, when in reality money should be chasing them. And that only happens when you learn to transform it into a flow, not a prison. Money flows to the ordered mind, to the person who knows how to direct it with intelligence, purpose, and gratitude. To build that new financial identity, you must begin to see yourself differently. Don't say, "I can't afford it." Say, "How can I generate it?" Don't say, "My salary isn't enough." Say, "I'm going to create new sources of income." Don't say, "I'm not good with money." Say, "I'm learning to master it." Every word you speak shapes your reality. Your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between truth and repetition. What you say with conviction, it will believe. And what you create, you will attract. That's why your affirmations must become your new mental foundation, the language that fuels your abundance. Repeat mentally each day with conviction and faith. Money flows to me easily and consistently. I am a magnet for opportunities and prosperity. Every decision I make brings me closer to financial freedom. My ideas and skills generate value and wealth for others and for myself. I deserve to be abundant, free, and happy. I manage my money wisely and my money trusts me. Every day my mindset expands and my income grows. These affirmations are not simply positive phrases. They are mental codes that rewrite your internal programming. Repeated with intention, they change your perception of the world and over time, your material reality. Your new financial identity also requires consistent action. It's not enough to think differently, you have to act differently. Knowledge without action is just entertainment. Start building habits that support your mindset. Track your expenses, automate your savings, research investments, eliminate unproductive debt, and surround yourself with people who talk about growth, not excuses. Every small habit creates structural change. When your actions reflect your vision, the universe begins to conspire in your favor. Remember that no one changes their destiny overnight, but they can change their direction in a second. And that second can be today. Change begins with a firm decision, to no longer allow fear to control your finances. To no longer buy things to impress others, nor go into debt impulsively, nor work without purpose. To decide that every penny that comes into and goes out of your life will be treated with respect, because it represents your energy, your time, and your effort. That decision marks the turning point between living in survival mode and living in creation mode. The ultimate commitment is to yourself, to turn every liability into an asset. This isn't limited to money, it applies to everything you own. Turn your mistakes into lessons, your fears into motivation, your ideas into projects, your contacts into partnerships, your habits into strengths. Everything around you can be an asset if you know how to leverage it. A wealthy mindset sees opportunities where others see obstacles. While many complain about the economy, true wealth creators reinvent it. You don't need perfect conditions, just determination. You don't need vast sums of money, just discipline and vision. Start with what you have, where you are, and what you know. Every step, no matter how small, brings you closer to independence. Open a savings account, launch a digital project, learn about investing, sell something, create value. But above all, commit to your own growth. Because those who grow internally inevitably prosper externally. Starting today, stop identifying with lack. Don't say, I'm poor, not even jokingly. Don't define yourself by your debts, your salary, or your past mistakes. Those are experiences, not identities. Your true identity is that of a creator, a conscious wealth builder, a being capable of transforming their reality with intelligence and faith. Every morning, look in the mirror and say, I am creating my financial freedom. Don't wait to feel ready. Take action until you become the person you envision. Financial reprogramming isn't about numbers, it's about energy. Poverty is a low frequency sustained by fear, guilt, and doubt. Abundance is a high frequency fueled by gratitude, confidence, and action. Raising your frequency is your true task. Being grateful for even the small things, maintaining faith in times of uncertainty, and taking action even if you don't see immediate results. Those who keep their energy high inevitably attract opportunities aligned with their purpose. This is your final challenge. Fully commit to your transformation. Not tomorrow, not when you have extra time or money, but now. Write your commitment statement. I commit to turning my liabilities into assets, taking full control of my financial life, and living with conscious abundance. Read it every day until it becomes a part of you. Because when the mind is convinced, the universe obeys. Living in financial freedom isn't a privilege. It's a consequence of discipline, awareness, and purpose. It's not about luck, but about structure. It's not about how much you have, but about how well you understand the game of money and how you choose to play it. Every decision you make from today onward will be an investment or an expense, a step toward wealth or debt. The choice is yours. And in the end, when you look back and see how far you've come, you'll understand that money was just the outward reflection of a deeper inner transformation. That the true asset was always you. Your mind, your faith, your creativity, and your determination. Because when you change, your world changes. And when you change your mindset, you change your destiny. That's your new financial identity, not that of someone who works for money, but that of someone who makes money work for their freedom. You are free. You are abundant. And most importantly, you are already rich because you have learned to think like one. So, if this audiobook inspired you and you're ready to delve deeper into your personal growth and inner transformation, I invite you to discover another eye-opening audiobook that will change the way you see the world, your decisions, and your potential. Click here and I'll see you there.